You didn't know you were a Deathworlder? Alien Girl's Playful Tease. First day jitters. Rena adjusted her atmosphere modulator for the third time that morning, her scaled fingers trembling slightly as she checked the readouts. The device hummed softly, maintaining the precise balance of gases her Zylaxian physiology required. Today was her first day as a student counselor at the Galactic Unity University, and everything had to be perfect. Breathing rate elevated 15% above normal parameters, chirped her personal assistant. Would you like a calming supplement? No, thank you, Pip, she replied, straightening her professional robes. First day nervousness is perfectly natural. The irony wasn't lost on her. Here she was, about to counsel students through their adjustment periods, while fighting her own anxiety. The university's massive space station slowly rotated outside her office window, its gleaming arms stretching out into the void. Each section housed students from different planetary systems, carefully regulated to maintain their native environments. It was a triumph of engineering and interspecies cooperation, even if some thought it was a bit too ambitious. A gentle chime indicated her first appointment had arrived. Rena quickly pulled up the student's file on her holoscreen and nearly dropped her datapad. A human. They'd assigned her a human on her very first day. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a young human male. He was shorter than she'd expected, though still taller than her, with warm brown skin and curly black hair. His file identified him as Dash Ramirez, a transfer student from Earth. Good morning, he said cheerfully, seemingly unbothered by the station's artificial atmosphere. Hope I'm not too early? Rena tried to hide her surprise. According to her briefing materials, humans required a specific mix of nitrogen and oxygen, yet Dash wasn't wearing any kind of atmospheric modulator. Not at all. Please, have a seat. I'm Counselor Rena. Dash settled into the chair across from her desk, which automatically adjusted to accommodate his form. Nice to meet you. Cool office. Love the view of the nebula. Thank you, Rena replied, still distracted by his lack of protective equipment. I notice you're not wearing an atmosphere modulator. Are you comfortable with the station's standard mix? Dash looked confused for a moment before understanding dawned on his face. Oh, right. No, I'm fine. Humans are pretty adaptable when it comes to atmosphere. As long as there's enough oxygen and the pressure's not too extreme, we can manage. Rena made a note in his file, fascinated despite her professional demeanor. I see. And how are you finding the artificial gravity? I can adjust it if it's too strong. Actually, it's a bit weak for what I'm used to, Dash said with a shrug. Earth's gravity is about 1.2 times what you have here. But it's kind of fun. Makes me feel like I can jump really high. Rena's secondary eyelids fluttered in surprise. She'd known Earth was classified as a high-gravity world, but hearing him describe it so casually was jarring. And the temperature? Your file suggests humans have a very narrow comfort range. Dash laughed, a warm sound that seemed to fill the office. Narrow? I guess that depends on your definition. Back home, I've gone skiing in minus 20 degrees Celsius and hung out at the beach in plus 35. The station's actually pretty comfortable compared to some places I've been. Each casual revelation made Rena's scales tingle with a mixture of fascination and disbelief. She'd studied xenobiology as part of her counseling certification, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of talking to someone from a death world who treated such extreme conditions as mundane. That's quite a range, she managed to say. How do you handle such variations? We've got some built-in advantages. Sweating helps us cool down. Shivering warms us up. Plus, we're pretty good at making clothing and shelter to deal with different conditions. He paused, noticing her expression. Is everything okay? You look a bit worried. Rena realized she'd been staring and quickly composed herself. My apologies. It's just remarkable. But we should focus on your academic adjustment. What courses are you taking this semester? As Dash explained his interest in xenoarchitecture and comparative cultural studies, Rena found herself increasingly intrigued. He spoke passionately about wanting to understand how different species adapted their building techniques to various environments. occasionally gesturing with hands that she now noticed were remarkably dexterous for their thickness. I've always been fascinated by how problems get solved differently across cultures, he explained. Like, we humans tend to build sturdy structures because our weather can be pretty intense, but I've seen images of Zylaxian cities that seem to flow with the wind. It's beautiful. That's very observant, Rena said, warming to his enthusiasm. Our architecture evolved to work with our environment rather than against it. Though I imagine that wouldn't be practical on Earth. Probably not, Dash agreed with a grin. The first tornado would make a mess of things. But that's what makes it interesting, right? How we all find different solutions. As their session continued, Rena found her initial anxiety giving way to genuine curiosity. This human wasn't the fearsome creature she'd half expected from her textbooks. Yes, he was clearly built for a more demanding environment than most species, but there was an openness to him, an eager intelligence that transcended biological differences. When their time was up, Dash stood and thanked her warmly. This was great. I was a bit nervous about fitting in here, but you've made me feel really welcome. Rena found herself chuckling at the irony. I should be thanking you. You've given me quite an education today as well. After he left, she sat back in her chair, processing the encounter. Her personal assistant chirped again. Breathing rate has returned to normal parameters. Session appears to have been successful. Yes, Pip, she agreed, looking out at the stars. Very successful indeed. She began making notes for their next session, already looking forward to learning more about this remarkable species that treated the impossible as merely interesting. What she didn't know yet was that this meeting would be the first of many encounters that would challenge everything she thought she knew about humans, survival, and what it truly meant to be adaptable. 2 weeks after her first meeting with Dash, Rena was already growing accustomed to the strange tales of human endurance that peppered their conversations. She learned to hide her shock when he mentioned activities like rock climbing or deep-sea diving, though she still couldn't quite grasp why anyone would voluntarily put themselves in such dangerous situations. Today's counseling session was focused on Dash's adjustment to the station's academic schedule. The 30-hour day is actually pretty nice, he was saying. Gives me extra time to dash. The lights flickered, cutting him off mid-sentence. A moment later, a deep rumble shuddered through the station's structure. That's not good, Dash muttered, already on his feet. Rena's scales prickled with alarm as her atmospheric modulator gave a warning chirp. The station's AI came to life. Warning. Environmental control systems experiencing critical malfunction. Backup systems engaging. Backup systems failed. Beginning emergency protocols. Rena felt her throat constricting as her modulator struggled to compensate. Around them, alerts blared as the station's carefully maintained atmospheric balance began to deteriorate. We need to get to the emergency shelters, she gasped, reaching for her emergency kit. Dash was already at her office door, examining the corridor through the small window. The environmental seals are engaging, he observed. But something's wrong with the emergency lighting. Can you see in low light conditions? Not well, Rena admitted, her voice tight with growing panic. Her species evolved in perpetual twilight, but the absolute darkness of a station-wide power failure was another matter entirely. Okay, stay close to me then. The shelter is 3 levels down, right? Rena nodded, then realized he might not be able to see the gesture. Yes, but the lifts won't be working. We'll take the maintenance shafts, Dash said firmly. They should have manual ladders. Come on. As they stepped into the corridor, Rena's modulator gave another warning beep. The station's atmosphere was becoming increasingly hostile to her biology. Around them, she could hear the sounds of panic, other faculty and students trying to navigate in the darkness, some crying out in various languages. Dash seemed to make a decision. We need to help them, he said, turning to Rena. Can you use your modulator's light to signal others? I'm going to guide people to the maintenance shaft. Before she could respond, a group of terrified Meridian students rounded the corner, their bioluminescent markings pulsing with fear. Dash immediately stepped forward, his voice calm and authoritative. This way. Follow the light and stay together. What happened next was both terrifying and remarkable to witness. As the station's environment continued to deteriorate, Dash seemed to become more focused, more efficient. He helped carry exhausted students down the maintenance shaft, made makeshift atmospheric filters from pieces of his own clothing for those whose modulators were failing, and never once showed signs of distress despite the thinning air. "How are you still functioning?" Rena managed to ask as they helped a group of Jovian exchange students navigate a particularly tricky section of the shaft. This is nothing," Dash replied, securing a safety line for an elderly professor. "The air's thin, sure, but I've been higher than this on Earth. Mount Everest Base Camp is way worse." "And the cold?" "Please. This is like a mild winter day in Chicago." A sharp crack echoed through the shaft, and suddenly the whole structure shifted. Several students screamed as they lost their footing, but Dash moved with incredible speed, catching two of them before they could fall. His muscles strained as he held them steady, showing strength that seemed impossible in the deteriorating conditions. "The structural integrity is failing," one of the Jovian students announced, their crystalline form vibrating with anxiety. "We cannot reach the designated shelter in time." "Then we make our own," Dash declared. He turned to the group, his face barely visible in the emergency lights. "There's a maintenance bay 2 levels down. It's designed for hull repairs, which means it has independent atmospheric seals and backup power. We can hold out there until help arrives." Rena watched in amazement as he organized their diverse group of survivors. He assigned tasks based on each species' abilities. The bioluminescent meridians provided light, the crystalline Jovians helped reinforce weak points in the walls, and those with technical skills worked on jury-rigging environmental controls. The maintenance bay, when they reached it, was cramped and cold, but it was safe. Dash worked tirelessly, helping set up emergency barriers and distribute the limited supplies they had. He showed others how to conserve heat by huddling together, taught them breathing techniques to help cope with the thin air, and kept spirits up with stories of human survival against impossible odds. "You know what this reminds me of?" he said as he helped Rena adjust her failing modulator. "This time I got caught in a blizzard while hiking. Had to dig a snow cave and wait it out for 3 days. This is actually much more comfortable. At least we have walls." Hours passed, and rescue teams finally reached them. As the emergency crews began evacuating students, one of the Meridian youngsters approached Dash. Their bioluminescence had shifted from fearful purple to a calm blue. "Is this why humans are called Deathworlders?" they asked. "Because you can survive things that should kill you?" Dash laughed. The Rena could see the exhaustion finally showing in his face. "We're not really that special. We just come from a place that taught us to be ready for anything. Life finds a way, you know." Later, as the station slowly returned to normal operation, Rena found herself reviewing the incident reports. The environmental failure had affected 12 decks, and while there were numerous injuries, there had been no casualties in their section. The report credited their group's survival to exceptional leadership and unprecedented adaptation to extreme conditions. She added her own note to Dash's file. "Subject demonstrates remarkable capacity for crisis management and environmental adaptation. More significantly, shows ability to transfer survival knowledge to other species effectively. Recommend further study of human emergency response techniques for possible inclusion in standard safety protocols." As she finished her report, Pip chirped, "Counselor, your next appointment is here." "Thank you, Pip," she replied, straightening her robes. She had a feeling her perspective on counseling was about to change dramatically. After all, how could she look at any challenge the same way after seeing what humans considered nothing special? "You want a what?" Rena stared at Dash across her office desk, her scale shifting to a pale blue of disbelief. "Go camping," Dash repeated cheerfully. "Well, simulate it anyway. I'm organizing an Earth cultural exhibition for the Xenocultural Festival next week. Thought it might be fun to show everyone what humans do for recreation." 3 weeks had passed since the environmental system failure, and Rena had spent much of that time researching Earth. Each new discovery left her more fascinated, and sometimes horrified, by the conditions humans considered normal. Let me make sure I understand, she said, pulling up her notes. You want to convince students to voluntarily sleep in temporary shelters, expose themselves to simulated weather conditions, and cook food over open flames? Exactly. Dash's enthusiasm was undimmed. We'll set up in recreation chamber 4. The environmental controls there are pretty sophisticated. We can simulate a nice forest environment. Nothing too extreme, just a mild spring evening under the stars. Rena's research screen displayed images of Earth's various biomes. What exactly constitutes mild by Earth standards? Oh, around 15 degrees Celsius, light breeze, maybe a gentle rain shower for ambience. He must have noticed her scales rippling with concern because he quickly added, We'll have proper shelter and safety measures in place. It's supposed to be fun, not a survival challenge. I see, Rena said slowly. She'd been studying Earth's weather patterns and was still struggling to comprehend how humans dealt with such environmental volatility. And this is something humans do, for enjoyment. Some of my best memories are from camping trips, Dash nodded. There's something special about disconnecting from technology and experiencing nature directly. Plus, it's a great way to build community. That caught Rena's attention. Since the crisis, she'd been particularly interested in how humans formed social bonds. Would you be willing to explain more about this tradition? Perhaps we could use it as a case study for cross-cultural understanding. Dash's face lit up. He spent the next hour sharing stories about Earth camping traditions, from simple backyard adventures to challenging wilderness expeditions. Rena found herself taking extensive notes, particularly about how these experiences shaped human psychological development. Here's what really interests me, she said, pulling up a holographic display of Earth's topology. Your species seems to have settled in almost every possible environment on your planet. Desert, tundra, rainforest, mountains, each presenting unique challenges. Yet you've not only survived but created recreational activities in these conditions. We're curious by nature, Dash shrugged. If there's a mountain, someone's going to wonder what's on top of it. If there's an ocean, someone's going to want to explore its depths. It's just who we are. Rena added another note to her growing research file. And this drive to explore, you believe it's connected to your species' resilience? Probably. When you're constantly pushing boundaries, you learn to adapt. Take diving, for instance. Humans can't breathe underwater naturally, but we invented ways to explore the oceans anyway. Now we have entire cities under the sea. Underwater cities? Rena's scales shifted to a deeper blue of amazement. But the pressure. Oh, that's nothing compared to some of the deep-sea research stations, Dash said casually. Did you know we've got facilities studying life forms near hydrothermal vents? The pressure there is incredible, but we figured out how to make it work. Later that evening, after Dash left, Rena found herself deep in research mode. She'd accessed the station's xenobiology database, comparing human adaptability metrics with other known species. The results were fascinating. Pip, she called to her assistant, display the Environmental Adaptation Index for Earth species, focusing on humans. The holographic display filled with data. Humans weren't the strongest, fastest, or most naturally resilient species on their planet. But they possessed something remarkable, an almost unlimited capacity for adapting to new conditions. Now overlay the technological development timeline, she requested. The display shifted, showing how human innovation had enabled them to survive in increasingly extreme environments. From the first use of fire to modern pressure suits, each advancement expanded their habitable range. Remarkable, she murmured. They don't just endure difficult conditions, they actively seek them out and find ways to thrive. A notification popped up on her screen. Dash had submitted his formal proposal for the camping exhibition. As she reviewed it, she found herself smiling at his careful consideration for different species' needs. He'd included modifications to make the experience accessible to everyone, from temperature-controlled sleeping pods for heat-sensitive species to specialized atmospheric bubbles for those requiring different air compositions. Pip, send a message to the Cultural Affairs Committee, she decided. I'd like to formally endorse this proposal. Noted, Pip chirped. Should I include your research findings as supporting documentation? Rena considered this. Yes, but add a note. This isn't just about studying human adaptability. It's about understanding how they turn challenges into opportunities for growth and connection. She turned to look out her office window at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, a planet that most spacefaring civilizations had classified as too dangerous for settlement. Yet its inhabitants had not only survived, but had developed a culture that celebrated their relationship with their challenging environment. A new message appeared on her screen. Students were already signing up for the camping exhibition, their comments full of nervous excitement. Among them was a note from one of the Meridian students who had been with them during the crisis. If humans can find joy in challenging conditions, perhaps we can too. Rena added one final note to her research file. Human adaptability extends beyond physical resilience. Their greatest strength may be their ability to transform survival skills into tools for building community and fostering growth across species boundaries. She was beginning to understand that what made humans remarkable wasn't just their ability to survive in extreme conditions, it was their drive to help others learn from their experiences. The camping exhibition wouldn't just be about experiencing Earth conditions, it would be about sharing the human perspective on challenges as opportunities. As she prepared to leave for the day, she found herself looking forward to experiencing this mild spring evening for herself. After all, if she was going to understand her human students better, she needed to step out of her comfort zone, even if that meant voluntarily exposing herself to weather simulations and sleeping in a temporary shelter. Pip, she said, add camping gear to my personal requisition list. I believe it's time for some hands-on research. The camping exhibition had been more successful than anyone expected. Recreation Chamber 4 had been transformed into a slice of Earth wilderness, complete with holographic stars twinkling above the artificial tree canopy. Students from dozen different species had experienced their first marshmallow roasting and learned human camping songs. Rena was reviewing the feedback submissions in her office when the first alarm sounded. This wasn't the blaring emergency signal from the environmental crisis. This was different. A low, pulsing tone that made her scales stand on end. Attention all personnel, the station AI announced. Unknown vessels approaching. Defensive protocols engaging. This is not a drill. Her door slid open, and Dash burst in. They've cut off access to the lower decks, he said without preamble. Security forces are isolated. Pirates? Rena asked, already reaching for her emergency protocols tablet. Worse. Organized attack. They knew exactly where to hit us. Dash's usual easy manner was gone, replaced by an intense focus that reminded her of the environmental crisis. But this was different. There was something almost predatory in his stance now. The station shuddered as something impacted the outer shields. Through her window, Rena could see 3 sleek ships, their designs unfamiliar, moving into attack positions. The student shelter areas are sealed off, she reported, checking the emergency systems. Security protocols are. Wait, they're failing. Someone's hacked our defenses. They're not after the station, Dash said grimly. Look at their approach vector. They're heading for the xenoarchaeology vault. That's where we keep the artifacts from the precursor sites. Rena's scales paled. The vault contained priceless artifacts from ancient alien civilizations, some of which contained technological secrets that could be devastating in the wrong hands. But the vault's defenses won't hold against someone who's already in our systems. Dash was moving, pulling up schematics of the station on her holoscreen. We need to think like prey. Like prey. Earth isn't just extreme in its environments, Dash explained, his fingers flying over the controls. Our wildlife shaped us too. Every human knows what it's like to be both predator and prey. Right now, we're prey. And what does prey do? Understanding dawned. They hide. They adapt. Exactly. And sometimes, a fierce grin crossed his face, they turn the tables on the predator. Look at their ship design. Those are atmosphere skimmers on the wings. They're planning to dock and send in boarding parties. How can you possibly know that? Because it's what I would do. Those ships are built for atmospheric flight. They're not deep space vessels. Someone on the station is helping them, giving them access. They'll need to dock to get to the vault physically. He pointed to a section of the station schematic. Here, Maintenance Base 6. It's closest to the vault and the easiest to access with those ships. Rena watched in fascination as Dash's mind worked through the problem. This wasn't just physical adaptation. This was generations of survival instincts being applied to a modern crisis. The camping equipment, he said suddenly. It's still in Recreation Chamber 4, right? Yes, but what? Perfect. Give me access to the environmental controls for the corridors between the maintenance bay and the vault. And we need to contact any security personnel who aren't locked down. The next 20 minutes were a blur of activity. Dash coordinated with the scattered security teams through Rena's office systems, positioning them strategically. He had maintenance droids relocate camping equipment to specific junctions, his instructions precise and oddly specific. They'll be wearing environmental suits, he explained as they worked. Standard pirate procedure when boarding a station, in case you need to vent atmosphere. But those suits have weaknesses. They're built for space, not that fierce grin again. Not Earth conditions. The station rocked as the first ship docked. On the security feeds, they watched as armed figures burst through the airlock. Just as Dash had predicted, they were wearing sophisticated environmental suits. Now, Dash said quietly, activating the modified environmental controls. The effects were immediate and devastating. The corridors between the maintenance bay and vault transformed into a gauntlet of Earth-like challenges. Sudden pressure changes from the camping equipment's atmosphere generators played havoc with the pirates' suits. Holographic projectors from the camping exhibition created disorienting patterns of light and shadow. Temperature regulators went haywire, creating patches of extreme heat and cold that confused the suit's sensors. But it was the final touch that proved most effective. The camping stoves, modified by Dash, released their fuel in a fine mist. Not enough to be dangerous, but enough to coat the pirates' suit sensors, blinding them. Predators rely on their advantages, Dash commented as they watched the pirates stumble and struggle. Take those away, make them fight on unfamiliar ground. Security teams, warned in advance and equipped with proper countermeasures, moved in. The pirates, their technological advantages neutralized by simple camping equipment and environmental hazards that any human child would know how to handle, were quickly overwhelmed. The entire incident was over in less than an hour. The pirate ships, their boarding parties captured, were no match for the station's defenses once control was restored. The internal collaborator, a junior technician with gambling debts, was identified and detained. Later, as station security conducted their debriefing, the chief of operations had one question for Dash. How did you know this would work? Dash shrugged, some of his usual casual demeanor returning. Humans have always had to deal with things trying to eat us or take our stuff. You learn to use everything available. Those pirates had technology, but they didn't have experience dealing with rapidly changing conditions. On Earth, that's just Tuesday. Rena, listening to the debriefing, found herself adding to her ever-growing research files. This was a different kind of adaptation than what she'd studied before. It wasn't just about surviving adverse conditions. It was about understanding them so completely that they became tools rather than obstacles. You turn the station into a death world, she realized, speaking to Dash after the debriefing. Just like the environmental crisis, but this time, on purpose. Not exactly, he corrected. I turned it into something unfamiliar and challenging. That's the real secret of human adaptation. We don't just survive harsh conditions, we learn from them. Every challenge Earth threw at us became a lesson, a tool in our toolkit. As she walked back to her office, Rena found herself viewing the station's safe environment in a new light. What she had once seen as perfect environmental control now seemed almost limiting. Perhaps there was something to be said for a little unpredictability, for learning to adapt rather than always being adapted to. Pip, she said as she reached her office, update my research files. Add a new category, tactical applications of environmental adaptation. Category added, Pip chirped. Would you like to include today's incident report? Yes, Rena said, looking out at the now peaceful stars. And add a personal note. Sometimes the greatest strength isn't in avoiding challenges, but in learning to transform them into advantages. Open log entry, personal research notes. Rena spoke softly as she sat in her office. The station's lights dimmed to evening cycle. Project title: Understanding Deathworlders, a Study in Human Adaptation. The events of the past few months had transformed her understanding of humanity. From that first meeting with Dash, through environmental crisis and pirate attack, to countless small revelations in between, she had gathered enough data for a groundbreaking paper on human adaptability. But tonight, something felt incomplete about her clinical analysis. Her door chimed. "Come in," she called, surprised to have a visitor this late. It was Dash, carrying what appeared to be 2 steaming cups. "Thought you might like to try something," he said, setting one cup in front of her. "It's called hot chocolate. Completely safe for Xylaxian biology. I checked with the medical lab." Rena carefully picked up the cup, her scales shifting to reflect her curiosity. The warmth seeping through the container was pleasant, and the aroma was unlike anything she'd encountered before. "We invented this drink thousands of years ago," Dash explained, settling into his usual chair. "The original version was actually used as medicine. Pretty bitter stuff. Over generations, we modified it, made it better. Some would say we perfected it." Rena took a careful sip and her eyes widened. The taste was complex, sweet but with deeper notes she couldn't quite identify. "This is remarkable," she said. "And you said it was medicine originally?" "That's the thing about humans," Dash nodded. "We're never satisfied with just solving a problem. We have to improve it, refine it, turn it into something more. Even our pleasures come from things that once helped us survive." Something about his words struck a chord with Rena's research. She set down the cup, her scales rippling with excitement. "That's what I've been missing. I've been studying human adaptation as a response to threats, but it's more than that, isn't it?" Dash smiled, seeming to understand her revelation. "We don't just adapt to survive. We adapt to thrive." "Yes." Rena quickly pulled up her research files. "Look at this pattern. Every crisis response I've documented shows the same progression. You don't just overcome challenges. You transform them into opportunities for growth." She began pulling up examples on her holoscreen. The environmental crisis. You didn't just help people survive, you taught them survival skills they could use later. The pirate attack. You turned camping equipment into defense systems. Even this drink. She lifted the cup. From medicine to pleasure. "It's not just humans, though," Dash pointed out. "You've changed too, since we first met. Remember how worried you were about my lack of atmospheric modulator that first day?" Rena laughed, realizing he was right. "Now I'm drinking hot beverages and volunteering for simulated Earth weather conditions. I suppose you're contagious. That's another human trait. We tend to drag everyone else along on our adventures." A notification popped up on Rena's screen. Her research paper draft was complete. She glanced at the title, Deathworld Adaptation Strategies and Their Applications in Modern Xenosociology. With a decisive gesture, she deleted it. "Starting over?" Dash asked, noting her action. "Yes," Rena said, her scale shifting to a determined purple. "I've been approaching this all wrong. The term Deathworlder itself is a misconception. It implies that humans are defined by their relationship with death, with survival. But that's not it at all, is it?" She began typing a new title, Beautiful Monsters, How Human Adaptability Reshapes the Definition of Thriving. "When other species look at Earth, they see a planet of dangers," she continued, warming to her theme. "But humans don't just survive there. You take those dangers and turn them into sports, into art, into celebration. You take bitter medicines and make them into drinks of comfort and joy." Dash leaned forward, intrigued. "Go on." "The true marvel of human adaptation isn't that you survive extreme conditions, it's that you refuse to see them as merely obstacles to overcome. Every challenge becomes an opportunity for growth, for creation, for connection." She gestured at her office window, where the stars shone steadily. "Out there, most species seek stability, predictability. We build stations like this to create perfect, controlled environments. But humans, you bring chaos with you. Not destructive chaos, but creative chaos. The kind that forces growth, that sparks innovation. We do tend to shake things up, Dash admitted with a grin. You're beautiful monsters, Rena said softly. Terrifying in your resilience, but beautiful in how you transform that resilience into art, into progress, into joy. You don't just adapt to your environment. You adapt your environment to create something new, something better. She turned back to her computer, fingers flying over the keys as she began her new paper. That's what I need to convey. Not just the mechanics of human adaptation, but its spirit. The way you face impossible challenges with not just determination, but with creativity and even joy. Speaking of joy, Dash said, standing up, a bunch of us are going spelunking in Recreation Chamber for tomorrow. We've programmed it to simulate some of Earth's cave systems. Wanna come? Rena's scales shifted through several colors before settling on a bright, adventurous orange. Will there be hot chocolate afterward? Of course. Can't have an adventure without proper refreshments. As Dash left her office, Rena added one final note to her research files. Perhaps the greatest lesson humans teach us isn't how to survive in harsh conditions, but how to find beauty in them. They show us that adaptation isn't just about enduring, it's about transforming both ourselves and our circumstances. They are living proof that the most challenging environments don't just create survivors. They create innovators, artists, and dreamers. Beautiful monsters, indeed. She picked up her cup of hot chocolate, now cooled to a perfect temperature, and took another sip. Tomorrow she would venture into simulated caves, facing artificial dangers with real courage. And somehow, she knew she would emerge not just stronger, but more alive. Because that was the true gift of humanity's influence. They didn't just show you how to survive. They showed you how to live. In log entry, she said softly. And Pip, please add spelunking equipment to my requisition list. Noted, Pip chirped. Would you like me to include safety gear? Rena thought about it for a moment, then smiled. Yes, but also, add something fun, something unexpected, something human. After all, she was beginning to understand. The best adaptations weren't just about safety. They were about embracing the beautiful chaos of growth and discovery. And somewhere on Earth, she knew, someone was probably inventing a way to drink hot chocolate while spelunking. Because that's what humans did. They took the impossible and made it not just possible, but wonderful.